we're talking about intangibles and the intangibles that Tom Brady had that made him the GOAT. But there's a quarterback that's the complete opposite, that apparently is slowing down the Arizona Cardinals from making a decision when it comes to who's going to be their new head coach. So according to Tony Pauline of Pro Football Network, some of the Cardinals' desired candidates are worried about being stuck with Murray as their quarterback for the foreseeable future. Rather, many of the desired candidates don't want to take the job knowing they'll be tied to the hip of Kyler Murray for the next 4 seasons, Pauline said. Now, Tony Pauline is at the Senior Bowl, and during the Senior Bowl, people are there to scout the prospects that are going to be participating in the Senior Bowl game. You have the Senior Bowl practices going on, but you also have a few leaks that come out around a couple of NFL teams. Not many, but 1 or 2. And one of the leaks, or one of the rumors that has been talked about going on during the Senior Bowl, has been the Arizona Cardinals head coaching search. And a lot of Cardinals fans are getting super defensive over these reports and these rumors, defending Kyler Murray, saying he's a great player. The media is just making him out to be a monster. But you want to know what's funny? A couple of years back, Charlie Casserly received a lot of backlash for the comments that he made about Kyler Murray after his combine interviews. Let's listen.
Charlie, but what did you hear about everything else that Kyler Murray did when he was in Indianapolis?
Well, he better hope Kingsbury takes him number 1, because this was not good. This was the worst comments I ever got on a high-rated quarterback.
Really?
And I've been doing this a long time. I'm probably doing it longer than you're alive anyway.
You have. That's why I said,
leadership.
Really?
Yes, leadership, not good. Okay, study habits, not good. The board work, below not good. Not good at all in any of those areas, see? And raising major concerns about what this guy's going to do. Now, people will say, well, we're going to compare him to Mahomes. We're going to run an offense like Mahomes. We're going to run an offense like Baker Mayfield. Well, you can. And by the way, Friday, tune in up to minute. I'll show you the offense you're going to run with this guy. It is possible. But those guys are much different. I mean, those guys, you never question about their ability on the board. You never question their leadership ability, their work habits. They were outstanding in those areas. This guy's not outstanding in those areas. It showed up in the interview.
So after re-listening to that, we fast forward a couple of years later. It looks like Charlie Casserly was 110% correct about everything he said about Kyler Murray. And that's really rare. When it comes to the NFL draft process, it's really hard to get an accurate read on how most of these guys are going to turn out. Oftentimes, you'll have dudes who'll be criticized for their character during the draft process. They end up getting drafted and they're model citizens. Then you'll have guys who are model citizens. They get to the league, they get paid, and then they just completely change. Charlie Casserly said that this was the worst report he've ever heard from a top-ranked quarterback. During the interview process, he said his leadership wasn't great, study habits not great, the board work not good. And you want to know what's funny? When the Arizona Cardinals paid Kyler Murray, he had a 4-hour study clause as a stipulation in his new contract. But the media is just making Kyler Murray out to be a monster, right? Now let's go back to what Charlie Casserly said. Leadership not good, study habits not good, the board work below not good. I find it funny how these same issues that occurred during the draft process about Kyler Murray are occurring once again. And you know, oftentimes in life, when it comes to rumors are only rumors until they are proven to be fact. And when it comes to Kyler Murray, are these still really rumors? Are these still things that we continue to question about Kyler Murray? Because these are things that have been repeated over and over again about Kyler Murray and questioned about him all throughout his career in Arizona. And you got Cardinals fans saying, well, if no head coach wants to work with Kyler Murray and they don't want to coach Arizona, then they're not the right head coach for us anyway. You're right. You are right. But you should be super concerned that the top head coaching candidates don't want to coach for you. Nobody wants to work with Kyler Murray. So that means that you might end up making a hire that could end up being desperation. You may end up making a hire of bringing in somebody who isn't qualified. Brian Flores is somebody who many people think is going to end up taking this job due to the connection that he has with Monte Austinfort, the new GM of Arizona. But even if you bring him in, is he going to be able to get along with Kyler Murray? You can't trade him. You can't cut him. You can't get rid of him because the cap hit is still going to be too big. It's going to be at least 2, maybe 3 seasons before Arizona can even think about moving on from Kyler Murray. So you're going to have to find a way to get along with him some way, somehow. If D'Amico Ryan, Sean Payton don't want this job, it's going to be hard really finding the most qualified head coach to get this job. Not to mention, it's not only just a contract, but he's coming back from an ACL injury. And a large part of Kyler Murray's game is his athleticism. Now, I don't think he's going to end up being RG3, but at the same time, there is a good chance that he may lose a little bit of that elite athleticism. Kyler Murray is undersized. A large part of why he has had success, or a good amount of success in the league up to this point, is largely due to his athletic ability. So if you take away just a tad bit of that athleticism, that dramatically impacts his game. Many players, when they talk about Kyler Murray, they say he's one of the most athletic players in the league. And he has to be. He's always been one of the most athletic football players when he's on the field since his high school days. Even during college, when he was playing for Oklahoma, he always looked like one of the most athletic players on the field. So if he comes back from that ACL injury and he's not even to be at least 80% of what he was when he was playing good football and when he was a 2-time Pro Bowler, then the Arizona Cardinals are going to be in a lot of trouble, because then you're going to have a hard time trading him because the play's not going to be there. He's undersized. You're going to have to build an offense around him. That's another thing why I think head coaches are skeptical about taking this head coaching job. Not just the leadership, the contract, and the questions about his commitment, but the fact that you have to dedicate a lot of time to building a offense around Kyler Murray because of the limitations that he has with his size. Cliff Kingsbury and Kyler Murray were a very good fit because Cliff Kingsbury ran the air raid offense, which is a offense that Kyler Murray pretty much has a lot of familiarity with since his college days, a little bit of his high school time as well. So he pretty much went to the NFL and then pretty much was just learning the same thing, just different terminology and a couple more advanced concepts thrown in there. You're bringing in a new head coach. Any head coach that's not offensive minded is going to have to put a lot of time on getting the offensive coordinator hire correct. And that's going to be a large part in dictating on who's going to be the next head coach of Arizona. If you bring in a defensive-minded coach, is he really going to be the best guy to bring in there? Could you really trust a defensive-minded coach to make a home run hire at OC? Because that's what the hire has to be. It has to be a home run. Kyler Murray is the kind of player that when you bring him in, you can't just put him in any offense. You got to build an offense around him, his size, and what he does best. The Arizona Cardinals head coaching search is not going good. They missed out on Sean Payton. You guys who know or who have been listening to the podcast know that I really wanted Sean Payton to go to Arizona. I was really disappointed when I heard the news that he ended up going to Denver. I felt like Arizona and Sean Payton could do some really good things. Kyler Murray isn't a bad quarterback. When Cardinals fans defend Kyler Murray, I don't disagree with all of it. I disagree when people defend his character. Yeah, he's not as bad as what the media may portray him out to be, but the content that he gives people and that he gives the media the run with, it's kind of a little bit his fault. You remember that Dan Patrick interview. You know how people continue to push the narrative about Kyler Murray. And the Dan Patrick interview was great material. So if you supply people with material to fuel their narratives, things are going to continue to be published about you that may be a little bit untrue. But at the same time, if you continue to have these kind of situations and these kind of stories coming out about a guy's character and anonymous teammates calling him out, former teammates calling him out, reports like this coming out, eventually there has to be a little bit of some truth to these reports. There has to be some truth to Kyler Murray's character and the way that it's being portrayed by the media. Even if it's not 100% correct, there has to be a little bit of some truth serum when it comes to this whole Kyler Murray character concern, his work ethic and whatnot. And when you just listen to him do these interviews, the guy doesn't really seem like he's a football nerd or like he's super dedicated to the game. Oftentimes when people ask him questions, it's mostly not related to football. Charlie Casserly was right about Kyler Murray, and a lot of people wanted to brush it off and say that he was just being overly critical of Kyler Murray, just throwing out BS. And when the whole contract stipulation came out, people just made it seem like it was just people making it out to be something that it's not. Listen, nobody tells you the study and is going to pay you all this money if it wasn't a problem. All right, if you have bad grades in the class and there's a test coming up and you know that you need to pass it, guess what you're going to do? You're going to study. So if you're paying a quarterback all this money and you know that he could be better, but the reason why he's not living up to his full potential is because he's not putting in the work outside of practice or off the field, you're going to give him, or you're going to try to force him to put in more work, to reach his potential, because you want him to be great. For the Arizona Cardinals, them taking out that 4-hour stipulation, I kind of was a little bit disappointed. And it kind of shows you everything you need to know about what's going on with that Cardinals organization and why nobody wants that job. Arizona, they coddled Kyler Murray. They've allowed him to get to this point. When he came into the league, he probably came back in a little bit more humble. Yeah, people might have overblown the Dan Patrick interview, and yeah, that may be a little bit of his personality, but overall, off camera, when the cameras are off, behind closed doors in the locker room, he could be one of the coolest teammates ever. But in the eyes of the media, and in the eyes of apparently a lot of coaches, nobody really wants to work with Kyler Murray, and nobody really views Kyler Murray in as high regards as Arizona Cardinals fans do. And listen, I agree with Cardinals fans that Kyler Murray is one of the most talented quarterbacks in the league. If Kyler Murray has gotten this far, not being super committed, and he's been a 2-time Pro Bowler, Offensive Rookie of the Year, he was a MVP candidate up till week 10 of the 2021 NFL season. If he's had this much success up to this point, not putting in the work, imagine how much better he could be if he actually was putting in more times watching film, putting in more hard work to get better. That's scary. And if you could find the right coach to bring that motivation out of Kyler Murray, Arizona could be scary. Arizona isn't a bad situation. I mean, maybe the ownership and the front office is murky and dysfunctional, but I do like their new GM. I do think that he comes off as a pretty personable guy. He's spoken to a couple of the players. He says that he would love to have a full team full of Buda Bakers. I love their new GM. I think he could be really good. But the head coaching search right now is a little bit of a drag. And it's not his fault. He didn't sign Kyler Murray. It's the Cardinals bending to the needs of Kyler Murray. So whoever your new head coach is, you got to find a new head coach who's not going to bend and coddle Kyler Murray. You got to have somebody who's going to, hey, dude, if you want to be on this team and you want to start, you need to start putting in the hours. You need to start putting in the dedication. You need to get in the head. You need to get a head coach in there who can make Kyler Murray realize his full potential. Cliff Kingsbury, he never really came off as a motivator. All right, he never really came off as a guy who was really personable with the players. And then it seemed like the players were willing to run through a brick wall for Cliff Kingsbury. Anytime you have a head coach, you want your players to like playing for their head coach. You want your players to have so much admiration for their coach that they're willing to put it all on the line for them. That is the sign of a great leader. A great leader is able to rally his troops. A great leader is able to motivate his players. A great coach is able to elevate the performance of his team. Look at what Brian Daboll did with the New York Giants. Part of being a great head coach is being able to manage personalities. And for a lot of these coaches, they don't want to put in as much time managing the personalities, especially when it comes to today's age in the NFL, because sometimes these players can be super difficult to work with. And I understand that. And for a guy like Sean Payton, you don't really got time to be putting up with that nonsense. You rather go deal with the mess in Denver. At least you don't have to worry about Russell Wilson's commitment. You know the dude's commitment. You know the dude wants to be a great quarterback. The dude doesn't want to suck. Kyler Murray, the dude's been so gifted talent-wise that he really hasn't had to put in that much work. And the reason why I'm kind of agreeing that these rumors are true is because me being at the age that I am and being around the guys that I've been around, 4-star recruits, they can be big-headed. You do have guys who are so talented that they want to skip practice and they just don't put in the same amount of work as others just because they can get by with their athletic ability and their talent. And there are guys like that. And Kyler Murray may just be one of those guys. He may be a Terrell Owens just in quarterback form. And that probably scares a lot of people. But talent-wise, you look at what Kyler Murray does on the field, I don't think the dude is as bad as what people make him out to be from a talent standpoint. Arizona Cardinals fans, you're not wrong when you defend Kyler Murray. Of course, he is your quarterback and you are going to defend him. But when you look at this head coaching search, Kyler Murray apparently is slowing it down. His ACL injury, the contract, nobody wants to be committed to him long term. Also, you have concerns about his dedication, the work ethic. Just a lot of things that many coaches don't really want to have the problem of dealing with. And it's understandable because who wants to deal with that from the quarterback position? That is one of the most important positions when it comes to determining the success of a head coach. And when you have a head coach whose job is on the line, do you really want to put it on the shoulders of a quarterback who you have questions about his work ethic? Would you go to a company and want to work for a boss who always comes in late? Do you think a boss that always shows up late is going to end up running the world's top company? Do you think that a CEO who doesn't put in work outside of the office is ever going to be able to lead a corporation to the top of whatever industry they're in? We live in a world where you get in what you put in more times than not in certain things. If you put in a lot of hours when it comes to studying and getting better in math, even if you're not great in math, you still will be better in math, studying and putting in the work than what you would be if you didn't. Hard work never killed anybody. To get to the top, you got to put in the work. And for Arizona, their quarterback Kyler Murray, apparently it looks as if he's not super dedicated. And coaches see it. And they don't want to work with Arizona. And I think personally, if I was a head coach, I would take the Arizona Cardinals job in a heartbeat. This roster is not bad. The only thing they have to do is rebuild the offensive line. And you don't have to worry about left tackle. You got DJ Humphries. So that's a good starting point. You got to rebuild the defensive line, but you do have a top 3 pick, and you do have some money to spend in free agency. So for the Arizona Cardinals, in this whole Kyler Murray situation, when it comes to their head coaching search being hindered because nobody wants to be tied down to this contract, you just wonder who they're going to end up hiring. And is he going to be the guy who can find a way to win with Kyler Murray long term?